Hello, welcome to Michelle Reads Books. So, today we are talking about The Secret Adversary. That is the second book that Agatha Christie wrote. And so we're going to look through, give you a summary first of what happens. I will give you a spoiler alert right now. I am going to tell you who did it. However, if you don't want to hear it, I will give you a warning just before I get to that end part. Okay, so in case you do want to read the book yourself, it was published in 1921. I am assuming that nobody is surprised at this point. Okay, so let's take a look. The Secret Adversary. So, old friends, young adults Tommy Beresford and Prudence Tuppence Cowley meet again after a separation. They have both been unemployed for some time, and they've both nearly completely run out of money. They discuss the issue and decide to go into business together, advertising themselves as the Young Adventurers. After parting, a man approaches Tuppence named Mr. Whittington. He offers her a lot of money to just live in Paris, all expenses paid. When asked her name, Tuppence gives the alias Jane Finn, which Tommy had briefly mentioned overhearing at one point. Mr. Whittington acts shocked, asking if Rita had told her about Jane Finn, and offers her £50 to keep quiet, and asks her to come back the next day. She and Tommy return together, only to find that the company has disappeared. In order to discover more, they advertise for information about Jane Finn. They have two answers, one from a Mr. Carter and one from Mr. Julius Hersheimer. Mr. Carter, it turns out, worked for the British government, and he explains that Jane Finn was a woman who survived the sinking of the Lusitania and was handed a sensitive government document by a British spy who had been on board and felt that Jane's chances of surviving the ship were higher as they were taking women and children first. But she disappeared shortly after arriving in England. Mr. Carter reveals that every time they get close to finding her, they were thwarted by a mysterious agent called Mr. Brown. Tommy and Tuppence then quickly go to their second appointment to meet Mr. Julius Hersheimer. Julius is the rich American cousin of Jane Finn. He is searching for her and has the only photo of Jane. He then reveals that he had recently given the only copy to a member of Scotland Yard called Mr. Brown. Going through the list of survivors of the Lusitania, they eventually discovered Mrs. Vandemeyer's first name is Marguerite, who goes by Rita. She is friends with Mr. Whittington and Sir James Peel Edgerton, KC. Tommy follows Mr. Whittington and eventually ends up in a mysterious house that he enters using the code word Mr. Brown. He's hit over the head while eavesdropping. Tuppence goes undercover as a serving maid in Mrs. Vandemeyer's house. Tuppence befriends a boy named Albert, who works in the building. Mr. Edgerton also tells Tuppence that she should work somewhere else. Tuppence and Julius decide to trust Edgerton, and they tell him everything they know so far, expressing their concern for Tommy, who has been missing for a week. Tuppence returns to her undercover job, where Mrs. Vandemeyer is preparing to flee. She holds Tuppence at gunpoint until Tuppence gets the gun herself. She offers Mrs. Vandemeyer a bribe to tell her where Jane Finn was, knowing Julius would cover the amount. Julius and Edgerton arrive together, and Mrs. Vandemeyer faints and weakly says, "Mr. Brown." They revive her with a cup of brandy and help her to bed. They lock the door and wait until morning. The next morning, Mrs. Vandemeyer is dead. Tommy has been taken prisoner in the strange house. A young French woman named Annette helps him to escape, but refuses to leave, yelling loudly that she has to return to Marguerite. Tommy goes back to the Ritz Hotel where they had been staying, looking for Tuppence, just to find that she had left in a hurry. He is told she was delivered a telegram and immediately left. They read the telegram, evidently from Tommy, directing her to a particular address. The address was a long-abandoned house, and Tommy and Julius search for a week before giving up. Sir James Edgerton contact them and tell them that he has found Jane Finn, who had amnesia and was pretending to be Mrs. Vandemeyer's niece. She claims to have recovered her memory and that she had hidden the treaty in a very specific place. Julius and Tommy go out there and find a note from Mr. Brown. Tommy returns to London and tells Mr. Carter that he has failed in his mission. At the Ritz, Tommy finds a photo of Annette in Julius's desk. Tommy figures out that Annette is really Jane Finn, and the Jane Finn they had met was a fake. He gets an original copy of the telegram Tuppence had been sent and discovers the address they were sent to was not what was originally sent. Tommy takes Albert with him and they go to the actual address. Julius shows up at the address where Jane and Tuppence are and threatens everyone with a pistol to take the women as well as Tommy and Albert with him. Eventually, Tommy takes the pistol and turns it on Julius, telling Jane and Tuppence to take the train to Sir Egerton's home. They do so and explain to him that Jane had hidden the treaty inside a picture of a scene of Marguerite from Faust in the secret house. Jane then faked amnesia and only spoke French, convincing her captors that it was real. She had been acting as Annette ever since. Tuppence thinks Julius is Mr. Brown. Egerton agrees and says that the real Julius Hersheimer was killed by Mr. Brown, and he had taken over his identity. They hurry to the secret house and recover the treaty. Here, Egerton reveals that he is Mr. Brown. He planned to kill the two women and injure himself, explaining to whoever discovered them that the real Mr. Brown had done it. Julius and Tommy then appear and overwhelm Egerton. He swallows poison concealed in his ring. They explain everything and turn over the treaty to Mr. Carter. The ring of spies has been broken up without their leader. Tommy then comes into some money and asks Tuppence to marry him. Julius also proposes to Jane. So, happy endings had by all. Now, my opinion of this book. This is a very exciting book. It is really fun to read, and I kind of like the cloak and dagger stuff, which isn't usually my thing, but I feel like it's done really, really well. And while it's also interesting to see how very, very different life was in the 1920s, before we could just call each other, or send each other a text, that people would literally disappear for a week and you wouldn't know where they are. Also, people would say, here, come by at 10 o'clock, and you just have to go. You can't say, hey, by the way, I have another appointment, I can't make it. You just have to show up when people ask you to. So it was really interesting seeing that cultural difference, and it was really, really fun to see like everybody thinking about like what could have happened. When Mrs. Vandermeyer is killed, it is clear to me that either Mr. Egerton or Julius Hersheimer is Mr. Brown. There's no other possibility. It's either that or Tuppence, and since we know it's not Tuppence, then it must be one of the other two. So it is really interesting how you can immediately narrow it down at that point, because she was killed. They were the only ones in the house. Everybody keeps saying, oh, I feel like he's here, he's here. Yeah, he is. He's one of the people you're looking at. You just have to figure out which one. But it's really ambiguous to the last because they both had a little bit of suspicious activity. It's not 100% clear. And then it looks like Tommy is convinced that it's Julius. And so everybody's like, oh, I guess it was him. I was actually leaning in the other direction. And then at the end, it's like, oh, it was Egerton the whole time. So I found that really interesting, and it was really, really fun to read. So if you like mysteries, I can highly recommend The Secret Adversary by Agatha Christie.